Ever walk into a room, like totally convinced you left your phone on the counter, only to find it in your pocket the whole time?
Yeah.
It's like our brains can be so funny sometimes.
Right.
And that's what's so cool about this book you sent in, Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yes.
It like really dives into how our minds work, all those little quirks and shortcuts
Yep.
and how they like shape our decisions every day.
It's like there's this constant tug of war going on up there
Oh, interesting.
between two systems
Okay.
that Kahneman describes.
I like it. Okay.
System 1 and System 2.
So like imagine our brains as a bustling city, right?
Yeah, yeah.
System 1 is that busy downtown, all hustle and bustle, running on intuition and instinct.
Yes.
It's fast, automatic, constantly making those snap judgments.
Exactly.
And then now picture System 2
Okay.
as the quieter, more like residential area.
Okay.
Thoughtful, analytical, but a little lazy.
A little lazy. Okay. Well, it prefers to just kind of kick back,
Yeah.
let System 1 handle things.
Unless it like really needs to step in.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So that time I swore I left my phone on the counter. That was System 1 jumping to conclusions.
Precisely.
Okay.
System 1 relies on what we call heuristics.
Okay.
These mental shortcuts we use to, make quick decisions based on patterns and past experiences.
Interesting.
They're usually efficient,
Right.
but sometimes they lead to biases. Oh, okay. Those predictable errors in thinking.
So Kahneman talks about the availability heuristic,
Yes,
where
right.
we judge something's frequency, like based on how easily examples pop into our head.
Exactly.
Like after watching Jaws, suddenly like every splash in the pool seems like a shark, right?
Exactly.
Makes sense.
The easier it is to recall something, the more common we think it is.
Okay.
Kahneman, he uses this example of the letter K.
Okay.
We overestimate how many words start with K.
Interesting.
Simply because those words
are easier to recall than words with K is the third letter.
So our brains are basically playing favorites.
Yeah.
Based on what's easiest to remember.
It's all about efficiency for System 1.
Wow.
And speaking of efficiency,
Okay.
let's talk about the halo effect.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever noticed how we tend to just assume attractive people are also more trustworthy
Totally.
or intelligent?
Yeah, it's like our brains think, okay, they look good. They must be good at everything.
That's the halo effect in action.
Wow. Okay.
We take one positive trait and generalize it to the entire person.
Right.
Even if there's no real evidence to support it.
So it's kind of like judging a book by its cover.
Exactly.
But for people.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
And this kind of ties into another fascinating concept.
Okay.
Priming. Even subtle cues can influence our thinking and actions.
Oh, wow.
Without us even realizing it. So like subliminal messaging.
Similar, but not quite as dramatic.
Okay. Yeah.
Kahneman, he shares this experiment where people exposed to the word eat were more likely to complete a word fragment as soup.
Interesting.
Instead of, say, soap.
Wow, so our brains are constantly making these subconscious connections.
Yes.
That's a little unnerving.
It really highlights the power of suggestion
Yeah.
and how easily our thinking can be swayed.
Okay.
System 1 loves patterns and it hates uncertainty.
Right.
So it's always trying to find meaning and create this coherent story,
Interesting.
even if it means filling in the blanks with assumptions.
So that explains why first impressions are so hard to shake.
Yes.
Our brains create a narrative.
Exactly.
Based on like limited information, and then we cling to it.
And that brings us to one of Kahneman's most insightful concepts.
Okay, hit me.
WISID.
WISID.
What you see is all there is.
Okay, so we're not just jumping to conclusions.
Right.
We're building
Right.
like entire castles on foundations of sand.
It's like our brains are saying, hey, this is the information I have.
Yeah.
So this must be the whole story.
Wow.
We just ignore what we don't know.
Yeah.
Which often leads to inaccurate judgments and decisions.
Okay, now I'm starting to get a little paranoid about my own thinking.
Right.
How can we trust our brains at all?
That's where the fun begins.
Okay.
It's not about eliminating these mental shortcuts altogether.
Yeah.
But becoming aware of them.
Okay.
So we can make more informed choices.
So knowing about these biases is the first step to overcoming them.
Exactly.
I like that.
And thinking fast and slow.
Yeah.
It gives us the tools to do just that.
Awesome.
It's like getting a backstage pass to our own minds.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Instead of being fooled by the magic tricks our brains play, we can finally see how the illusions work.
And once you see those mechanisms, you can't unsee them. It's like a whole new way of looking at the world.
That's so cool.
And understanding human behavior.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got these two systems.
Yes.
System 1, System 2.
Right.
Constantly interacting.
Yep.
And System 1 is always taking these mental shortcuts, relying on heuristics, which sometimes leads to biases.
Precisely.
And all of this is happening, like beneath the surface, shaping our thoughts and actions without us even realizing.
Without us even knowing.
It's crazy.
It is.
This is already making me rethink so many of my decisions.
Right.
Like, how often do I fall for the halo effect without even noticing?
It's more common than we'd like to admit.
Probably.
But awareness is the key.
All right.
Once we start to recognize these patterns, we can start to, question our assumptions and engage our more rational system, too.
So thinking fast and slow isn't just about understanding our mental quirks. It's about, becoming better decision makers.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
It's about empowering ourselves to make more rational, informed choices.
Gotcha.
In all aspects of our lives.
This is definitely a deep dive I'll be thinking about.
Oh, good.
Long after we finish recording.
Hope so.
What other mental marvels does Kahneman have in store for us?
Well, next we can delve into one of his most groundbreaking concepts.
Ooh, okay.
Loss aversion.
Okay.
Get ready for a real mind bender.
I'm ready.
So let's talk about loss aversion. Imagine this.
Okay, I'm ready.
Would you be more thrilled to find, a $10 bill on the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Or more bummed to lose a $10 bill from your wallet?
Ooh, good question. Honestly, losing the $10 would sting way more. Why is that?
That's loss aversion in a nutshell. Kahneman's research shows that we feel the pain of a loss much more strongly than the pleasure of an equal gain.
So even though it's the same amount of money either way, our brains are wired to, freak out more about losing it.
Seems irrational. But this has huge implications for how we make decisions.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to, money and risk.
So that's why people hold on to losing investments for way too long.
Exactly.
They're trying to avoid the pain of admitting defeat.
Yeah, they're trying to avoid that loss.
Interesting. And it also explains why we might stay in a job or a relationship that's not really working just because we're afraid of the laws involved in starting over.
Exactly. It's that fear of loss.
Wow. This is making me reevaluate a lot of my choices.
Right.
It's like loss aversion is this hidden force influencing everything.
And speaking of hidden forces,
okay,
let's talk about framing effects.
Okay.
Have you ever noticed how the way information is presented can totally change your perspective?
Oh, for sure. If a sale says 50% off, it sounds way better than pay only half price.
Right.
Even if it's the same thing.
Exactly. Kahneman, he uses this classic example involving a potential disease outbreak. When options focus on lives saved, people tend to choose one path.
Okay.
But when the same options are framed in terms of lives lost, people suddenly become more risk averse.
It's wild how just changing the wording can shift our entire decision-making process.
It really does.
Like our brains are playing tricks on us.
Remember how System 1 loves a good story?
Yeah.
It's easily swayed by the way information is presented, even if the underlying facts remain the same.
So how do we fight back against these framing effects?
Like slowing down and really thinking through the information. Don't just react to the initial framing. Try to reframe the problem in different ways.
Gotcha.
See if your decision changes.
So it's about engaging System 2.
Exactly.
Our analytical side.
Yes.
To override those knee-jerk reactions.
Precisely. And this brings us to a really interesting distinction that Kahneman makes.
Okay.
The experiencing self versus the remembering self.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these two selves.
Imagine you're going on vacation.
Okay.
Your experiencing self is the one living through each moment.
Yeah.
Feeling the sand between your toes.
I like it.
Tasting the delicious food.
Yes.
Soaking up the sun.
Sounds blissful.
But your remembering self is the one that forms the story of the trip. Okay. And it tends to focus on the peak moments.
Yeah.
The most intense highs and lows.
Right.
And how the experience ends.
So even if most of the trip was pretty average, a few amazing moments, or a great ending could make us remember it as incredible overall.
Kahneman He found this plays out in fascinating ways.
Oh, really?
He studied patients undergoing colonoscopies.
Okay.
Some with longer procedures, but less pain at the end.
Interesting.
Guess what? They rated their experience as more pleasant overall.
Wait, so even though they endured more total pain,
Yes.
the fact that it ended on a less painful note created a more positive memory.
Exactly.
That's so interesting.
This has big implications for how we design experiences,
Right.
from vacations to medical procedures.
It's like a reminder to savor the good moments.
Yes.
And try to end things on a high note.
And speaking of endings,
Oh.
Kahneman wraps up the book with some humbling insights about our ability to predict the future.
Oh, I'm all ears. I've made some pretty questionable predictions in my time.
We all have. The thing is, we tend to overestimate how much we know and how well we can predict outcomes.
It's like after a big event, everyone suddenly becomes an expert.
Yes.
Explaining why it was inevitable all along.
That's hindsight bias at work.
Right.
The past always seems more predictable in retrospect, which inflates our confidence about predicting the future.
But the future is this big, messy, unpredictable thing.
Exactly. And Kahneman's work challenges us to be more humble, to acknowledge the limits of our knowledge, and to embrace the fact that we can't control everything.
Okay, so if even experts often get things wrong, how are we supposed to make informed decisions in a world full of uncertainty?
That's a great question. And a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so if we can't always trust our gut, or even the experts, what can we rely on when making decisions?
Well, Kahneman suggests turning to algorithms and statistical models whenever possible.
Okay.
Especially for complex decisions with high stakes.
You mean like letting the numbers decide instead of our intuition?
Yeah.
But what about like those aha moments, those flashes of insight? Don't those count for something?
Intuition definitely has its place.
Okay.
Particularly in areas where we have a lot of experience and feedback.
Gotcha.
Think of like a seasoned firefighter sensing danger, or a doctor making a quick diagnosis.
Right.
Their intuition is honed over years of practice.
Okay, so it's not about ditching intuition altogether.
No, not at all.
But like understanding when it's reliable
Exactly.
and when it might be leading us astray.
Exactly. True expertise is built on consistent feedback and pattern recognition.
Okay.
But even in areas where we develop expertise, it's important to remember our intuitions can still be influenced by those sneaky biases we talked about.
It's like we're constantly calibrating.
Yeah, it's a constant process.
You know, checking our gut against the data.
Exactly.
And trying to make the most informed choice.
And that's what makes thinking fast and slow so valuable.
Right.
It gives us this framework for understanding our minds, not just as they should work, but as they actually do, warts and all.
One of those warts that really resonated with me is the idea of mental accounting.
Oh, yes.
It's like we treat money differently depending on where it came from.
Exactly.
Or what we plan to spend it on.
Those mental budgets.
Yeah.
They can be helpful for organizing our finances.
Right.
But they can also lead to some pretty irrational behavior.
It explains why I'll happily splurge on, concert tickets.
Yes.
But then stress over buying a $5 coffee the next day.
Right, right.
It's all coming from the same account.
Yeah.
But it feels different in my head.
We compartmentalize.
Yeah.
And sometimes those compartments don't quite make sense.
Totally.
It's like that classic example of the sunk cost fallacy. Ever stayed in a boring movie just because you already paid for the ticket?
Oh, totally guilty of that.
Yeah.
It's like we're trying to justify the investment, even if we're miserable.
We hate to admit defeat, even when cutting our losses would be the most rational choice.
This book is like a therapy session for my decision-making process.
I know, right?
It's making me question everything.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Kahneman isn't trying to make us feel bad about our mental quirks.
Right.
He's giving us the tools to recognize them and make more informed choices.
It's empowering to realize we're not just puppets of our own biases.
Exactly.
We could learn to anticipate those mental shortcuts.
Yes.
And outsmart them.
Thinking Fast and Slow isn't just a book.
Yeah.
It's a journey of self-discovery.
I love that.
And the more we understand our minds, the better equipped we are to navigate the world around us.
This deep dive has been incredible.
It's been a pleasure.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on how my brain works.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's definitely a book I'll be revisiting.
I hope so.
And recommending to everyone I know.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Well said.
Yeah.
And to all our listeners out there,
yes,
pay attention to those mental shortcuts, those moments where your brain takes the easy route.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
Exactly.
Until next time.
Yes.
Keep those brains buzzing.
Keep thinking.